presentation. Okay? So for the next half an hour, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, and then we'll have the coordinators meeting.
Welcome here Mr. Robert Visser, who is the Executive Director of the European Asylum Support Office, EASO. We welcome here Mr. Visser to make the presentation of the 2012 working programme of the agency. Mr. Visser, you got the floor.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Thank you also for inviting me at the beginning of this year, 2012.
Yes, excuse me for a second. Again, a reminder. Mr. Visser is already using the floor, so please, those who are leaving the room, do it in silence, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. At the beginning of the new year 2012, as you might recall, I started at the 1st of February last year, so 2012 will be the first full year for the new agency. The first year was a year of building and working at the same time. Building, of course, of a new organisation from scratch, working on a limited number of specific items, of which I certainly will name Greece and giving support to that country. You have seen in the working programme that we try to cover a wide area of tasks as described in the regulation at this year. But let me name some focus points, maybe to pinpoint a little more our work. The agency is there to support the common European asylum system, the convergence in the practice, the day-to-day practice of the asylum services, of the practice in the member states in conformity with and in function of that common asylum system. And in that respect, the agency will focus on 3-4 main items. The support at the place where it starts, at the basis, at the place where the best we can work on convergence, that is training and education. Starting with a European-wide programme for training so that all the caseworkers, all the people on the ground work with the same context, the same training context, because that is the best first step for a conversion of operational practices. Second, trying to come to solid information on the core of the asylum process. The core of the asylum process, the asylum decision, is around the situation in a country of origin. If that is solid information and if that is independent and impartial information, that is considered to be one of the best contributions to an asylum process of high quality. Thirdly, and there's no order in what I say, is an alert system. You are aware that on different fora at this very moment there is discussion about some sort of what they call early warning system. In the regulation of EASO there is already a basis for a sort of alert system, and what we will try to build up this year, and we have started already, is a system of alert giving information about the situation in the different member states on a comparable basis. That is not yet the case. And second, on the capacity, the way in which the member states have built their systems, and thirdly, of the external factor in this respect. What can we learn, what can we analyse? I'm not going to say that we can predict, I have no crystal ball, but certainly we can learn from analysis and trends and try to come to a situation where preventive measures or at least preparatory measures can be taken, hopefully in an earlier stage. Then there is a separate but not less important part that is the special solidarity. All, of course, what the EASO does has the label of solidarity. It's organising solidarity. But the special solidarity is for special cases like Greece, and I'm just now discussing with one other member state the possibility of providing special emergency support, but that will certainly be one of these days. There are a number of other subjects, of course, to be mentioned in the work programme. I mentioned one specifically, the specific attention we give to unaccompanied minors, a large area to deal with. Lastly, as the area is concerned, there is the external dimension. I had to decide, much to my regret, I must admit, because it's an essential part of the migration dossier, at this year not to go into that subject in the way that might be necessary due to the budget cut that I had to accept. I hope for the next year that situation will be different, and I take this opportunity to thank very much the European Parliament for the amendment that finally went its own way, but at least was a lot of support in the direction of EASO. Two final points, Mr. Chairman. One, at the hearing before my appointment, on the 9th of December 2010, I promised the European Parliament that I would organise a consultative forum with civil society within the first year of my being in office. Last December, 15th of December, we had that first consultative forum in Valletta in Malta, and I was very happy that also the LIBE committee was officially represented by Mrs. Jean Lambert. I think that it was a good start. A dialogue with society is not a matter of meetings, and certainly not a matter of one meeting. It's a process, it's a continuity, but we started a process with that first meeting, and I look backwards on that with positive feelings. Last point, Mr. Chairman, the organisation. Building up an organisation from scratch is not easy, as you are all aware. There are a lot of formalities and procedures, but by now we have an organisation with headquarters in Malta of about 35 people of staff, and with a temporary bureau de passage, temporary office in Brussels of about 10 people. So we are going in the right direction. At this very moment in Malta we are in a temporary building. I hope by mid this year that we will have our real building, and end of this year we plan to have about 60 people of staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we are ready to open the discussion, getting started. Maybe the Commission, represented here by Mr. Giulio Di Blasi. Would you not?
No.
Not necessary. That will be okay. Then we get started with the members. Mr. Busuttil.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and let me join you in welcoming Mr. Visse to this committee. It's a great pleasure to have you here. You have been in office since 1st February of last year, and this committee has given you quite a long honeymoon period, but as they say, the honeymoon now is over, and our committee very much looks forward that in 2012 EASO will deliver. As you rightly pointed out, the European Parliament has strongly supported the establishment of this agency, and now we are very much impatient to see it deliver in an area that is very important for us. Let me make 3 questions. Just this morning we've had the Justice Minister from the Danish Presidency tell us that tomorrow they will put the issue of a concrete solidarity mechanism on the agenda of the JAI Council meeting. I would like to know whether, in view of this, and whether also in view of the recent Commission communication on solidarity, EASO is in any way involved in the establishment of a concrete solidarity mechanism in the area of asylum. My second question relates to the relocation project for Malta. My understanding is that EASO will now have a role in extending this project to make it not just permanent, but one that is applicable to all member states that could potentially benefit from this. May I ask you whether you are already managing this project, because to my mind this has not been a particularly successful project at all so far. And thirdly and finally, I would like to ask you whether EASO is in any way studying or contributing on the ongoing debate on the review of the Dublin regulation, which, as you know, is completely stuck in Council. The Dublin regulation may well be stuck, but of course, as long as it's stuck, the Court of Justice of the European Union will still hand down its judgments, and now we are getting judgments which essentially say that in its current format the Dublin regulation cannot be applied because it risks breaching human rights. And therefore I would like to know whether EASO is contributing to this ongoing debate on the Dublin regulation, which is an intrinsic regulation in the asylum package. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Señora Romero López.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Visser, for having spoken to this committee. We really wanted to meet with you. In fact, you've been in office for over a year, but I just wanted to say that the main guidelines for the working programme, as far as I'm concerned, don't seem enough, because there's not enough in practical terms that we need. What we really need is an explanation of what the agency is doing, what's the bottom line of what it's doing, what is the agency doing, what kind of solid information are you gathering, what kind of information are you working with. Also, are you working with the government agencies of each different country? What kind of volume of asylum requests are we getting in Europe from the south of Europe? We have no common system of gathering information. We don't know exactly how many asylum requests are coming into your centre, how many people are being detained in the detention centres, how many people are waiting, how many cases are still pending, how many asylum requests are coming in under the Dublin system, and how many people have been sent back, how many are kept in the camps that exist in the southern countries. Basically, these are issues that we've been talking about for a long time. We don't have information and statistics to guide our work, and without statistics, we at the European Parliament don't have the information that we need, and it's for this purpose that we created the agency itself. This is the only way we can provide a community response to the problem, if we have statistics. Of course, it depends on each member state submitting its information and it being collected properly in the right place. But asylum seekers, it seems, are in worse conditions in the European Union, it seems. They have no right to have their case heard. They're having to wait extremely long time, and they're getting much worse conditions than they actually fled from in the European Union. So this subject is very, very important. The EASO needs to base its work on a solid level of information, and that's the only way we can come forward with solutions that will provide a sustainable approach. And that's why we really need to know exactly what kind of concrete work you're doing, what kind of programs you have in place, even if they're experimental, to try to promote solidarity. We know that the amount of people are affected by this are huge. How long will it take for the thousands and thousands of people currently in detention centres to have their cases heard and to have things processed? Because how long does it take for these detention centres that we're hearing terrible stories from the NGOs? How long does it take to get people through and processed?
Gracias, señor.
Thank you. Mr. Papanikolaou.
Mr. Visser, thank you from my side also for your introduction. Thank you for all the information that you provided. I come from Greece, and I'm involved in our committee in the negotiations for the Asylum Pact, and I try to follow all the evolutions at the European level regarding the asylum procedures and the level of the protection that we provide. In many of our discussions with stakeholders, with NGOs, with colleagues, with other institutions, we refer to the EASO as a new tool that we have in our hands, and we can use it in the future to combine it and to find solutions in many dossiers that we negotiate, and in many projects that we are trying to support. For example, the early warning mechanism is a crucial element for the negotiations concerning Dublin II regulation, and we count on you. And I see here for the work programme of 2012 that the staff that is the staff for this is only one person, the support staff to create the early warning mechanism. And I totally agree with you that you try to organize an agency from zero, and no one can disagree on this. And to tell you the truth, having discussions about EASO and trying every time to support EASO because I believe in this agency, usually the answer that I get is that EASO is a new agency and it's not ready till now. And in my view, and I want to add what colleague Busuttil and colleague Romero Lopez has said, EASO should become our expert for asylum procedures in European level. That's what I have in my view, in my mind, that we are creating an expert that can support each and every member state. So my question is this: do you think that at this crucial moment for Europe, and with all these problems that we have, that EASO is this kind of an expert? I know that your financing, as you already mentioned, is not the proper one. But except for this, is your mandate the one that follows what I have in my mind, that you can be the expert and the one that you can provide us real and effective solutions for the problems that we have concerning asylum procedures? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Signora Angelilli.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'd also like to welcome Mr. Visser. I have three questions. First of all, the two first have already been given by Mr. Busuttil. Also, I just repeat, what is the role of the European Office in the debate on the solidarity mechanism and the review of the Dublin regulation. But my question to you is on unaccompanied minors. Unaccompanied minors is an emergency. Minors are particularly vulnerable and therefore they deserve special attention. To such an extent that the LIBE Committee in fact has requested and obtained from the Commission a pilot project on unaccompanied minors. Very often NGOs or local administrations deal with these youngsters, and very often they don't really have adequate financial resources, because children do need more attention, not just a reception facility, but they may need to go to school, they may need psychological support and so on. So they should be received in an appropriate manner, both in human terms and in economic terms. You have just touched upon it, but I would like to hear whether there's any more information.
Madame Mathieu.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chairman, and welcome to the Director. First of all, I have a question on the training that you mentioned for these programmes. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, as well as the relations you have with Frontex? Thanks.
Merci, and Mr. Bronx, finally.
Thank you. The electorate might want to ask why an asylum policy needs to be common. Well, of course, one motivation is to prevent governments being lobbied successfully by their populations to stem the flow of those who claim, sometimes dishonestly, to be seeking asylum. It gives member states the opportunity to throw up their hands in mock despair, deny responsibility and blame somebody or something else, in this case the EU. You might think it strange for me to appear to be rushing to the defence of the EU, but of course blaming the EU is to blame a body that has no clear responsibility, and I use that word deliberately, responsibility in the sense of accountability and removal to the populations of Europe. The European Parliament, of course, does have a theoretical responsibility, but it's only one institution among many, and electors, by and large, don't know which MEPs voted for which measure. Perhaps in 2014 we ought to remind them. Thank you.
Okay, now back to you, Mr. Visser, to reply the questions that have been made.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank all the honourable members for their questions, remarks and reminders. The honeymoon is over and you better deliver. I can fully understand this general remark. It is now the next year and the agency is there to have added value and not to spend money without any visible result. So the point is well taken. Let me, if you allow me, to point out a few specific items going through the number of questions and maybe one or two remarks in more general terms. Is the EASO involved in the solidarity mechanism / Dublin II discussion, because that is intimately linked? The answer is yes. I will be in the informal JHA Council tomorrow, and I'm asked to participate in the discussion. I have been involved in the discussion leading up to some proposals, and I think that it is a natural role, given the regulation of EASO, that EASO indeed plays a role there. Plays a role in what I call the alert system, what in more formal terms is called early warning system. That's really a serious thing. Going immediately from this to the question of Mr. Papanikolaou, is EASO capable at one moment to play that role? That I think, is the heart of the question. And I have asked that myself as well. Being an agency with limited resources and huge expectations at the other hand. My experience by now is that it is. But I need support. Even the support office needs support. I seek the support at all sides. Just to continue on the question of information and alerts, it is only possible to set up a system of alert of information, as was stressed by Madam Lopez as well, if you work together. And it is actually quite surprising that at this moment we do not have that information. The European Union exists for some time. The subject of asylum has been on the agenda for more than 10 years and even 15 years, and maybe in some countries even longer. And we do not have yet comparable, reliable and independent information. Setting up that is not a matter of a few weeks, but we are certainly hard working. We use the information of the member states. We organise the information of the member states. The question of Mr. Papanikolaou, if the mandate on EASO is enough in this respect, I'll try my utmost. The goal is there in the regulation, the goal that there should be some sort of information and early warning system. But I do not have a formal capability to direct to the member states that they should use this and this definition, or that they should use this and this information, or that they should provide such data. I think it's possible within the structure and within the way in which EASA works with the management board, with the Commission, with UNHCR, etc., to organise it in such a way that we will have an acceptable result. And we started that process in last November. Only since last November I have real own staff. So in that respect I'm a little younger than referring to February, but that's not an excuse at all. Since November we started collecting information from the member states. I will present my first annual report, which should have statistics and information, hopefully early spring. That means March, April. And that should contain, it is the first report, it's certainly to be improved, but that will contain at least some of the information that you're all referring to. And I hope that we can build on this sort of information the expert position, the independent expert position that you are correctly asking for. We will not only use Eurostat and the member states, but also explicitly the NGOs. Trying to bring together in an independent way the different sorts, but also sometimes images of information that exist all over the European Union. Point of relocation and Malta, specific point, but very important also given the communication of the Commission end of last year that relocation in itself should be a more pronounced subject within our policy. I have offered the support for the second phase of the relocation process. That is still in preparation. So up till now, I'm not really actively involved, but I will as soon as the process of the second phase will be activated. Let me just see what I have not mentioned. Unaccompanied minors, of course, that's a very important point to mention. In this subject, we are in a certain way, the contractor of the European Commission. There is the European Commission Action Plan on Unaccompanied Minors. That is the EU-wide action plan with more participants and more fields and areas than only the specific point where the agency is responsible. We work closely together for that reason with the Commission and with Frontex on a number of specific actions within the action plan. There are two main subjects where we are focusing on. That is age assessment in all its aspects. I don't need to explain how important that subject is, and the whole context once an age has been assessed on how to deal with it, with unaccompanied minors, resulting hopefully in specific and practical guidelines for the member states, best practices, but also general guidelines for the different services to take into account. NGOs also in this process are involved in the discussion. The matter of training, there was a training program started as a pilot within the so-called GDESC conference some years ago. A number of member states participated. As since the 1st of January of this year, EASO has taken over the whole EAC, European Asylum Curriculum project, and it will build it for the 27 member states, or maybe 28 as from next year, to be it the general basic training program. We already plan for this year 13 trainings all over the curricula of the European asylum policy, and that's a real, I think, intense project. Cooperation with Frontex, yes, on many specific areas. I mentioned unaccompanied minors because Frontex has a role there as well as recognizing at the border unaccompanied minors. I also mentioned the risk assessment and alert system because data are also collected by Frontex and we should not duplicate the work. In Greece we work together as the Greek action plan is addressing asylum and border management altogether. And there are a number of other areas where we are exploring working together, for example, training, as the training on both agencies covers to a certain extent the same subjects. And the last remark on the accountability. I personally consider it as a great privilege to be the first agency under the Treaty of Lisbon that has a more formal role and so a form of accountability towards the European Parliament. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Visser. Well, thank you for the presentation of the working programme of your agency for 2012. Thank all the contributions and announce that as we are some minutes of delay, we are to thank also the interpreters for the minutes, the additional minutes that they have spared us.